In 1933, the United States government shut down every single bank in the country for 4 straight days. Not a single deposit could be withdrawn, not one mortgage could be paid, and while 99% of Americans were panicking, a small group of working families were quietly buying houses for pennies on the dollar. 3 specific kinds of houses to be exact, and the third one is still legal to buy today. The banks just don't want you to know it exists. I'm Marco Valenti, and what I'm about to tell you isn't taught in any high school history class. It's not in your financial advisor's playbook, and it's definitely not in the brochure your bank handed you when you opened your savings account. This is the story of how ordinary working-class families built generational wealth, while the richest banks in America were collapsing around them. Stick with me to the end, because the third house is the one that still works in 2026. Let's set the scene. March 6th, 1933. Franklin Roosevelt has been president for 36 hours. He walks into the Oval Office, picks up a pen, and signs a proclamation that closes every bank in the United States. 10,000 banks had already failed since the 1929 crash. 2,000 more would never reopen. By the time the dust settled, 40 to 50% of every home mortgage in America was in default. 1,000 foreclosures a day. Home prices had collapsed by 35%. A $6,000 home before the crash was worth $3,900. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because while most families were losing everything, a small number of working families were doing the opposite. They were buying. House number 1. The first kind of house they bought was the foreclosed home dumped directly by the bank. Here's what your textbook leaves out. When a bank foreclosed in 1933, they didn't want the house. A house was a liability on their balance sheet. They had to pay taxes on it. They had to maintain it. They had to find a buyer. And buyers were almost impossible to find because nobody had cash. So the banks quietly started accepting offers from anyone who could put together even a small amount of money. Working-class families who had cash hidden in mason jars or under floorboards walked into bank offices in the spring of 1933 and bought houses for 30 cents on the dollar. Sometimes less. These weren't auctions advertised on the front page of the newspaper. These were quiet transactions handled in back offices. Because if word got out that the banks were dumping homes at fire sale prices, it would have triggered another wave of panic. That's house number 1. The quiet bank dump. And before you ask, yes, it's happening again right now, just under a different name. House number 2. The second kind of house was the tax deed property. Here's what most people don't realize. Even during the worst year of the Great Depression, your local county still needed to collect property taxes. Roads still had to be paved. Schools still had to pay teachers. And when homeowners couldn't pay, the county seized the property, and then the county had to sell it. In 1933, county courthouses across America were holding tax deed sales every month, sometimes every week. Working families who showed up with as little as $50 or $100 walked out as the legal owner of someone else's home. This wasn't theft. This wasn't a scam. It was the exact same legal mechanism that exists in every state in America today. The county auctions the property to recover the unpaid taxes. Whoever wins owns the home. Why did Wall Street stay silent about this? Because it required no broker, no banker, no middleman, no fees. The wealthy didn't need it, and they didn't want the working class to know it existed. So it stayed buried in courthouse basements, where most of it still sits today. House number 3. And now, the third house, the one I told you about at the start, the one that's still legal, the one banks would rather you forget. In 1933, working-class families who couldn't afford a finished home bought a kit home from a Sears catalog, or an Aladdin catalog, or Montgomery Ward. The kit arrived on a railroad boxcar. 30,000 pre-cut pieces of lumber, numbered and labeled. A man with basic carpentry skills could assemble the entire house in 90 days. And the price? Between $400 and $2,500 for a complete modern home with electricity, indoor plumbing, central heating, things most rural families had never had in their lives. Sears alone sold 75,000 of these homes. Aladdin sold 100,000 more. Add in Montgomery Ward and Gordon Van Tyne, and you're looking at hundreds of thousands of working families who built their own equity while the banks were busy collapsing. The kit home is still legal in 2026. Multiple companies still sell them, but you won't hear a word about them from a real estate agent, from a banker, from a mortgage broker, because there is no commission, there is no 30-year loan, there is no mortgage interest for the bank to feed on. That is why they buried it. The lesson. So here's the pattern. 3 houses, 3 channels, all 3 completely legal in 1933, all 3 still legal today in some form in 2026, and all 3 bypass the bank. That's the thread. That's the story they don't want connected. When the banks are scared, when the system is shaking, the channels working families use to build wealth are the channels that don't need a bank in the middle. In 1933, a bricklayer in Cleveland a railroad worker in Memphis, a school teacher in rural Ohio, they all figured this out. And the families who acted on it passed property down to children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, properties that today are worth 6 and 7 figures. The question isn't whether this works. History already answered that. The question is, are you paying attention this time? If this is the kind of history they didn't teach you, hit subscribe. We're going through every single one of these moments. Weimar, 1933, 1971, 2008, one by one. The next video covers the 4 assets that beat Wall Street from 1929 to 1945. You don't want to miss it. This video is for educational and historical purposes only. Nothing in this content constitutes financial, legal, or tax advice. Real estate decisions involve risk. Consult a licensed professional before acting on any information presented here. As always, stay focused, stay consistent, stay elite.